There is a place the chaos of this world cannot reach you. There is a coordinate in the spirit realm where pandemics lose your address, where economic collapse cannot find your name, where the arrows of 2026, the ones flying in the headlines, the ones flying in the hospitals, the ones flying in the financial markets pass over your household without landing. That place has a name. It is called the secret place of the Most High. And the man who wrote Psalm 91 was not writing poetry. He was writing a legal document, a covenant contract between the creator of the universe and every soul willing to dwell, not visit, not occasionally check in, but dwell permanently, intentionally, unwaveringly under the shadow of the Almighty. Look at the world around you right now. Look at the uncertainty that presses against the walls of your home every single morning. Look at what parents are facing, what families are navigating, what nations are wrestling with in this hour. There is a genuine, unprecedented, relentless pressure bearing down on this generation, and it is not slowing. The noise is louder than it was last year. The threats feel closer than they did the year before that. The group, and that once felt stable beneath ordinary life, has developed cracks that no economist, no government, no human institution seems capable of sealing. And yet Psalm 91 was written for exactly this moment. Not a moment like this, not a season resembling this. This moment, this year, this household, this family standing at the intersection of history and eternity, wondering whether the promises of God are still active when the world outside looks the way it does. The answer is not only yes, the answer is a resounding, unqualified, covenant-backed yes. The psalmist saw plagues that walk in darkness. He saw destruction that wastes at noonday. He saw terror by night and arrows that fly by day. He catalogued with the precision of a man who had looked catastrophe in the face every category of disaster that a human soul could encounter. He did not minimize the danger. He did not pretend the threats were imaginary. He named them one by one with unflinching honesty. And then, having stared directly at everything that could destroy a life, a family, a future, he had the audacity, the holy boldness to declare, "None of it shall come near your dwelling." That is not wishful thinking. It is not religious optimism dressed up in beautiful language. That is a promise anchored in the character of a God who has never broken his word, and the condition attached to that promise is not perfection. It is not wealth or influence or spiritual performance or a flawless track record with heaven. The condition is position. Where are you dwelling? Because here is what most people have never been taught about Psalm 91. The protection described in this passage is not automatic. It is not distributed equally to everyone who believes in God in a general, casual, occasional sense. It is reserved specifically, deliberately, exclusively reserved for those who have made the Most High their habitation. Not their hobby, not their emergency option, their habitation. There is a profound difference between a person who knows about a fortress and a person who lives inside one. The person who knows about it may admire it from a distance. They may speak well of it. They may even visit it from time to time when the danger becomes too great to ignore. But the moment the threat passes, they return to their ordinary dwelling, and the protection of the fortress no longer applies to them. The person who lives inside the fortress, however, does not need to run to it when the storm comes. They are already there. They were already covered before the danger arrived, before the diagnosis was given, before the financial pressure mounted, before the crisis announced itself. They did not scramble for shelter, they were already sheltered. This is the invitation of Psalm 91. Not to pray harder when things get worse, not to reach for God as a last resort after every other option has failed, but to relocate spiritually, daily, intentionally into the one dwelling place where the chaos of this world loses its authority over your life. The secret place is not a feeling. It is not a mood or a moment of spiritual warmth on a Sunday morning. It is a chosen position, a deliberate act of trust, maintained through daily communion, daily confession, and daily dependence on the God who calls himself a refuge, a fortress, a shield, and a deliverer, all in the same breath. And the extraordinary reality is this: the canopy has always been open. The shelter has never been withdrawn. The covering that Psalm 91 describes has been available to every generation that ever walked this earth. Throughout every plague, every war, every economic collapse, every season of darkness that history has ever recorded, the world did not know where to find it. Now you do. Psalm 91 is not one promise. It is a fortress built of 7 distinct guarantees, and every wall of that fortress is not only ancient in its origin, it is urgently relevant to what your household is facing in 2026. Every guarantee was written with your address in mind. Every declaration was crafted for the precise weight of pressure your family is carrying in this season. And when you understand the architecture of this fortress wall by wall, layer by layer, you will never read this psalm the same way again. The first guarantee is refuge. He is my refuge and my fortress. A refuge is not somewhere you run after disaster has already arrived. A refuge is somewhere you position yourself before the storm takes shape on the horizon. There is a generation of believers who have been trained to seek God reactively, to call on His name when the crisis is already at full force, when the hospital bed is occupied, when the bank account is empty, when the marriage is at its final thread. And God in His mercy answers even the end. But Psalm 91 is not written for the reactive believer. It is written for the one who has made God their habitation in the ordinary days, in the quiet mornings, in the seasons when nothing appears to be wrong, because those are the days that build the walls before the storm ever arrives. The second guarantee is deliverance. He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler. The fowler does not announce himself. The trap is never placed in plain sight. The most dangerous threats of this hour are not the ones making headlines. They are the ones that look like opportunity, like safety, like wisdom, like progress. False information dressed in credibility. Agreements that appear to carry blessing but are laced with consequence. Relationships that seem like open doors but lead to closed futures. God does not merely promise to protect you from what you can see coming. He promises to deliver you from what has been designed to look harmless. That is a supernatural intelligence operating on behalf of your household discernment that goes far beyond your own capacity to detect danger. The third guarantee is coverage. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. This is the image of a mother eagle hovering over her young wings spread wide, body positioned as a barrier between the vulnerability of her offspring and the cruelty of the world above them. This is not a distant God dispensing blessings from a remote heaven. This is a God who places Himself between you and the threat. His faithfulness, not your resourcefulness, not your preparation alone, not your network of connections. His faithfulness becomes your shield and your buckler. And the breathtaking implication of that truth is this: when your cleverness runs out, the shield remains. When your strength is exhausted, the coverage holds. When you have done everything you know to do and it still is not enough, the wings do not retract. The fourth guarantee is fearlessness. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. Fear is not simply an emotion that makes life uncomfortable. Fear is a spiritual posture, and the posture of fear positions a person outside the canopy of Psalm 91. When a household loses its anchor in this psalm, every headline becomes a verdict. Every medical report becomes a sentence. Every economic shift began. My confirmation that the worst is inevitable. But the household that dwells in the secret place has access to a peace that does not require favorable circumstances to remain intact. It does not need good news to function. It functions with full force in the absence of good news, because it is not rooted in what is happening around the family, but in who is covering the family. The fifth guarantee is observation without participation. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Pause at this verse. Sit with the weight of what it is actually saying. Not that calamity will cease to exist in the world around you. Not that the people of God will be airlifted out of a world in crisis. Not that the news will become suddenly pleasant, or that the global pressures will dissolve because you prayed. The promise is far more specific and far more stunning than that. You will watch what others experience without becoming a participant in it. You will stand in proximity to destruction without absorbing it. You will be surrounded by what is overwhelming the world and remain unswallowed by it. This is not a promise for another cent, right? This is the promise for right now, for 2026, for your street, for your bloodline. The sixth guarantee is angelic assignment. He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. This verse demands to be received not as metaphor, not as poetic comfort, but as operational reality. Your household has been assigned an escort. The host of heaven has received specific instruction regarding your family, not general, not collective, but specific. Every path your feet walk, every road your children travel, every decision that hangs in the balance of uncertainty has an angelic presence actively engaged with the outcome. This is not folklore inherited from religious tradition. This is the declared word of the God who created both the visible and invisible world. And he has committed his invisible army to the protection of those who dwell in his presence. The seventh guarantee is answered prayer. He shall call upon me and I will answer him. This is the covenant made intimate. This is the fortress revealing its most extraordinary feature. It is not merely a place of protection, it is a place of communication. God does not simply shelter the household that abides. With him, he answers them. He responds to them. He is in active, living, real-time dialogue with them. In a world drowning in noise where every platform, every voice, every system competes for attention and offers nothing of lasting substance, the one who abides in the secret place carries something the world cannot manufacture. A direct line to the one whose answers are always right, always timely, and always sufficient. 7 guarantees, 7 walls, 1 fortress. And the extraordinary thing, the thing that must not be passed over, is that Psalm 91 does not present these as possibilities. It does not offer them as outcomes that might occur under favorable spiritual conditions. Every single verb in this psalm is written in the language of certainty, declarative, absolute, immovable. The grammar of this psalm is the grammar of a God who does not hedge his promises, does not add disclaimers, and does not revise his covenant based on the severity of the threat. The threats of 2026 are not more powerful than the God who wrote Psalm 91. The economy did not surprise him. The instability did not catch him unprepared. The pressures pressing against your household did not arrive without. But his awareness, without his provision already in place, without the walls of the fortress already standing, waiting for the family willing to move inside and stay there. The protection was never the question. The dwelling always was. Because 7 guarantees mean nothing to the household that never moves in. A fortress with every wall intact, every provision in place, every angel on assignment is useless to the family standing outside it, hoping things will improve on their own. This psalm does not call you to hope from a distance. It calls you to dwell. You have heard enough truth today to make a decision that changes everything for your household. Not a small decision, not a minor spiritual adjustment that gets added to an already crowded list of good intentions. A reorientation, a complete, deliberate, wholehearted turning of every person under your roof toward the one address in the universe where no peril of 2026 has jurisdiction, where no threat carries authority, where no weapon formed against your family has the legal right to prosper. The time for passive belief is over. The hour demands active dwelling. And active dwelling begins with understanding that what God has laid before you in Psalm 91 is not a passage to be admired from a distance. It is a habitation to be entered, maintained, and inhabited with conviction every single day. The world outside is not waiting for you to get comfortable. The pressures are not pausing while you decide. The arrows are already in the air, and the only question that remains, the only question that has ever mattered, is whether your household is positioned under the canopy before they land. Here is what this moment demands of you. Make the declaration and make it daily. The psalm opens with a declaration, not a request. He is my refuge, not a refuge, not one option among many. My refuge, owned, claimed, personalized, and spoken with the full weight of covenant authority behind every syllable. This is where the covering begins, not in the silence of assumption, but in the boldness of declaration. When you speak Psalm 91 over your household, you are not merely reciting ancient words. You are activating an ancient promise. You are drawing the boundary lines of divine protection around every soul that bears your name. You are reminding heaven of its assignment and reminding the enemy of his limitations. And both audiences are listening with complete attention every time the words leave your mouth. Speak this psalm in the morning before the world floods in with its noise. Speak it in the evening before the anxiety of tomorrow can take root in the night hours. Speak it over your children by name, not collectively, not generally, but specifically inserting each name into each promise until the psalm becomes a personalized covenant declaration over every individual life in your household. Because the covering is not anonymous. God does not protect households in vague, undefined ways. He keeps you in all your ways, and that specificity demands a specific response. Build the altar and refuse to abandon it. The secret place is not accessed through one desperate prayer offered at the edge of crisis. It is inhabited, and habitation requires consistency. The household that positions itself under the canopy of Psalm 91 is not the household that prays magnificently once and then drifts back into spiritual silence. It is the household that builds the altar of daily communion and guards it with the same seriousness with which they guard every other priority in their lives. Consider why. Our household protects faithfully. The schedules are protected. The finances are managed. The physical health is attended to. How much more then should the spiritual covering of your family be treated as the non-negotiable foundation beneath every other priority? Because when the covering is intact, everything else operates from a position of strength. When the covering is neglected, everything else becomes vulnerable, not because God has withdrawn, but because the household has drifted from the dwelling place where the protection resides. Return to the altar. Build it in the center of your home, not on the margins of your week. Make prayer the infrastructure of your household, not the decoration. Let the secret place become so familiar, so established, so woven into the daily rhythm of your family's life that moving away from it begins to feel like leaving home, because that is exactly what it is. Cover your children with the authority you have been given. Every child in your household exists under spiritual authority, and that authority is either being exercised by you or conceded to forces that do not have their well-being in mind. This is not a time for passive parenting in the spirit. This is a time to stand in the full weight of the parental mantle and speak the covering of Psalm 91 over every child by name, over every path they walk, over every relationship they are forming, over every digital space they inhabit, over every future that is taking shape in their lives right now. Do not assume that your personal covering transfers automatically. Speak it explicitly. Pray it deliberately. Declare over your children that no weapon formed against their minds will prosper, that no trap set for their feet will close, that the angels assigned to their protection are active, alert, and operating in full force on their behalf, because the word of God says so. And the word of God is more reliable than any threat the enemy has constructed against the next generation. Your children are not accidents of history born into a difficult time. They are covenant children positioned in this generation with divine purpose, and Psalm 91 is as much their inheritance as it is yours. Give it to them. Teach it to them. Declare it over them until it becomes the foundation upon which their own faith is built. Refuse the spirit of fear without apology. Fear is not merely an emotion that makes life uncomfortable. It is an agreement, and every agreement carries consequences. When fear is entertained, when it is given room at the table of the mind, when it is allowed to shape decisions and govern responses and determine what the future will or will not hold, it functions as an open door through which the very things feared are granted access. This is not superstition. This is the spiritual law that underlies Psalm 91 itself. Because the psalm does not simply promise protection, it commands fearlessness as the posture of the protected. You cannot dwell in the secret place and simultaneously dwell in dread. You cannot confess the coverage of Psalm 91 with your mouth while giving the final word to every threatening headline with your heart. The decision to refuse fear is not a denial of reality. The threats are real. The pressures are real. The uncertainty of this hour is genuinely felt by every honest person alive. But the one who dwells under the canopy looks at the same reality as everyone else and arrives at a different conclusion, because they are operating with information that the fearful do not have access to. They know who is covering them. I know what has been promised. They know that the God who made the heavens and the earth has staked his own name and his own faithfulness on the protection of those who abide in him. That knowledge is the antidote to every fear 2026 can produce. Anchor your household in the covenant and do not let go. Every other security this world offers has an expiration date. Wealth can be inflated away. Health can be disrupted overnight. Positions of influence can dissolve in a single news cycle. Relationships without a covenant foundation can fracture under the weight of enough pressure. There is not a single human system, human institution, or human resource that carries the permanence of the covenant God makes with those who dwell in His presence. But this covenant, the one written into every verse of Psalm 91, does not expire. It does not depreciate. It does not become less effective as the threats become more sophisticated. It does not require renewal, renegotiation, or updating, because it was written by the one who exists outside of time and saw every threat your household would ever face before the foundations of the earth were laid. The covering was not designed for a simpler world. It was designed for this world, a complex, volatile, uncertain, pressure-filled world your family wakes up in every single morning. Anchor yourself in it. Anchor your spouse in it. Anchor your children in it. Let it become the unshakable ground beneath your feet when everything else is shifting, because it is the only ground in the universe that genuinely cannot be moved. The year 2026 will write two very different stories about two very different kinds of households. One story will be written about families who were swept along by everything that came, who absorbed the fear, who were defined by the pressure, who survived but were marked by what they endured. The other story will be written about families who walked through the same year, faced the same world, breathed the same air, and emerged untouched in the places that matter most. Not because the threats were not real, not because the arrows did not fly, but because there was a canopy over their household that the arrows could not penetrate. Because there was a covering in place that the darkness could not locate. Because there was a family that made a decision not in a moment of crisis, but in a moment of clarity. Why exactly like this one, to dwell in the secret place and never leave? That family can be yours. That story can belong to your household. That covering is available right now, in this moment, without delay, without prerequisite, without a waiting period between the decision and the protection. The secret place is open. The canopy is extended. The God of Psalm 91 is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And He is waiting, not with indifference, not with conditions beyond what He has already stated, but with the full force of His covenant love and His undefeated power for your household to come home. Come home to the secret place, because the shelter was always there. The only question left, the only question that has ever mattered, is whether you will walk through the door.